Thank you, everyone. City team or city council, any non-agenda items this evening?
Nothing from us, Mayor.
Okay. I will start out by saying, please do what is on my shirt and make sure that you vote. The election is November 5th, and you have to, you can drop it in the mail. You don't need a postage stamp anymore. It just needs to be postmarked by the 5th. Or you can drop it off in any of the drop boxes around the area in the county. We'll get back to it. We also, the closest drop box is probably at Tigard City Hall. So regardless of how you vote, please make sure that you get out and vote and that your voice is heard. It's incredibly important. So T-minus 2 weeks to go. There's lots of really great information in your voters pamphlet. So please do your research and make sure to get it in by the 5th. We will start off with proclamations and recognition, and we are proclaiming November 2024 as Critical Infrastructure Security and Resilience Month, which is incredibly important. Just to talk about every resident of Tigard, to recognize that infrastructure matters and to acknowledge the importance of protecting our nation's infrastructure resources and enhancing our national security and resilience. It's a really great proclamation. We will have it posted and talk about it. So thank you so much for helping us celebrate and honor it in November. We will move on to public comment. If you'd like to call in, please do so now to get into the queue. The phone number is 503-966-4101. Or anyone wishing to comment by video, please also log in now. Anyone who wants to comment in person, there is a sign up at the back of the room where you can sign up for in-person public comment. And we will start with City Manager Reimer for follow-up to previous public comment from the October 15th meeting.
Well, thank you, Mayor. Good evening, everyone. Mayor, councilors, members of the community, and my teammates. We had 2 written public comments last week from Lindsay Voorhees, and Kim Azell followed up appropriately with her. We did not have any in-person or video callers. Thank you.
Thank you. We did receive one public comment or one written comment by noon yesterday, which was from Mike Antonelli regarding the city manager recruitment process. Do we have anyone signed up for in-person public comment today? Excellent. Thank you. We're going to ask you to come on up. There's 2 different microphones you can choose from. Please go ahead and turn the microphone on, and you will have 2 minutes, and there's a timer that will be displayed. And we will start with CB Wright. Welcome. Come on up. Oh, could you go ahead and turn your microphone on? And IT, can we get the timer up on the screen? Mr. Thornburg, thank you. All right, go ahead.
Hello. Whoops. And I know you've all done that. And thank you for being here today and listening and all of that. I'm here to make a comment about the proposed just compassion policy of if they think that a person is not right for their program, then they're going to exit them to the Knoll Knoll Boulevard. And so I want to thank you for having this meeting, and I am here to ask for your help. I live at the Knoll, a 48-unit low-income senior building directly across the street from Just Compassion. We have been impacted for the last 2 years with street camping, garbage issues, strange behaviors, and sometimes very dangerous looking people. Our only accommodation for Just Compassion services beginning this spring is no trespassing signs. that have been posted both over at the Hunzinger Street, then people can cut right through our parking lot to get to the front door of Just Compassion. And then, of course, there's no other than the police coming at some point way to enforce no trespassing. We need some support from you, really, to begin a plan for safety and access to our neighborhood. Currently, there is no one from Tigard, income management property organizations, the managers of our building, or CPAH management that are open to helping our building and our neighborhood, which also is apartments right across the street, with no barriers, and our neighborhood to prepare for the Just Compassion opening. And that's really, there's both income management properties and CPAH. There's just an on-site manager 1 day a week and 2 half days, and the residential manager comes for 2 hours once a week. And other than that,
CB, I'm really sorry.
Okay.
Your time is up, but we have your email address,
All right.
so we're going to reach out to you to discuss this further.
that would be absolutely lovely. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next individual signed up for public comment is Gabriel Bueller. Welcome. Come on up.
Hello, my name is Gabriel Bueller. I'm here about your task force for the homelessness. So I'm an advocate for veteran homelessness, and it gives me unique knowledge in being a veteran on how to help veterans. I would hope that you would take into consideration for your task force appointing Tigard residents, someone that knows their community and not somebody that's outside of the community, because they have the most vested interest in their own community, like I have in helping veterans. And I would like to volunteer for that committee if that is possible. I'd be more than willing to help out with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Thornburg, is there anyone wishing to comment by phone or video tonight?
We have 3 callers in the queue, and I don't think there's anybody for video.
Okay, thank you so much. If you could let the first person in.
Okay, Anna, you can start speaking.
Oh, thank you so much. You are at Tigard City Council public comment. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak. This is regarding the homeless task force proposed tonight. I am encouraged to hear that the city is working to create more opportunities for input on the current homeless response. However, I had some concerns that the primary voices represented in this proposed task force are those who are involved in the nonprofits operating the homeless support programs, work directly for or in close partnership with governmental agencies, or participate in a city-appointed group. The proposed task force appears to the public as another layer between the government and its constituents. This does not open the process to transparency nor engage differing perspectives. CHART has been involved in the city's current response to homelessness, including the Safe Parking Program, and the Committee for Community Engagement was also consulted. During this time, a location was chosen, resulting in 10 months of community pushback. Combining these committees would not add any new perspectives. We need new voices representing the residents impacted by homelessness in their neighborhoods or proposed future programming. It should be done in 2 ways. Number 1, ongoing town hall style meetings that put city councilors, city employees, and the community at large face to face, such as during the safe parking meeting at the library. And number 2 is moving forward with the task force. create 2 positions for community members with differing perspectives from the city's current approach that are outside these current committees. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can you let us know your name, please?
Yes, Anna Murphy.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Mr. Thornburg,
Thank
can
you.
you let the next caller in?
And Lindsay, you are online.
Thank you. Welcome to
Thank you,
Tigard
Sarah.
City
Lindsay-
Council. If you could let us know your name, and then you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much. Lindsay Voorhees here. I'm also hoping to speak and have an explicit ask of council related to the task force. I believe that the community needs to have a voice on this committee. I'm asking specifically that 2 to 3 community member at large positions are added to the task force and are part of this process from the very beginning. As Anna shared, there's a history of residents and constituents feeling as though they've been left out of the process and have been informed after decisions have been made or mostly made. That's not gone well. We have a vested interest in collectively helping to solve the local homelessness crisis here in Tigard and have worked hard to collaborate and would like the respect to have that community voice be represented on this task force. And I'd like to give the rest of my time to the first woman who spoke, who I could tell was unable to finish what she had to say. If she's still available, can you please give her the rest of my time?
Thank you for the offer, but we will be reaching out with her directly. So, Mr. Thornburg, can you let the next caller in?
Yes, next caller, Michael, you are online.
Hi, Mel.
Thank you.
Michael, welcome to Tigard City Council. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Michael Antonelli, Tigard resident. I was calling in regards to the item from 2 weeks ago, your last city council meeting, regarding the selection of a new city manager. And I did follow up with that meeting. I sent an email to all the councilors via the council mail email address. But I just wanted to follow up for the public record. Basically, I thought that 2 or 3 of the councilors made really good cases that we kept this be a public process from the beginning to the end. Councilor Schlack and Shaw, and possibly Councilor Hu. And I just wanted to add to their comments that I think the public deserves to be involved with that entire process from the beginning to end. So I was very much against the idea of putting together I forget exactly what you referred to it as. And I pointed out in my email that the Oregon Revised Statute makes a good case that expediency and efficiency is not a good reason to try to expedite that process by forming a subcommittee. Let's keep it an open process from the beginning to end to keep the public involved, please. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Mr. Thornburg, has anyone else called in the meantime?
None at this time.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone. We will move on to the Budget Committee meeting, and we have Finance Director Kang and Budget Manager Plath with us. And all of the Budget Committee members, please come on up.
Good evening, Budget Committee members, Mayor and Council. For the record, my name is Eric King, and I'm the Finance Director. And tonight, we are going over our Budget Committee quarterly check-in, going over some budget updates, and then we have a few other discussion items that I'll talk about in just a moment. But before we get started, I was going to introduce one of our newest team members. We have James Kennedy, who is joining. He's new to the team as of 3 weeks ago.
10-7.
Yeah. So brand new. He's already in the hot seat.
Good to be here, guys.
And of course, returning. If you want to, for the record.
Sure. Thank you for having me here tonight. Kalina Plath, Budget Manager.
Network Administrator Thornburg, could you please pull up the PowerPoint slide? Thank you. Could you go back a couple, maybe to the second slide? All right, thank you. All right, so to kick things off today, we have an agenda set. I just want to welcome everyone again. Today, the planned agenda is to go over the fiscal 24 unaudited year-end financial results, and then have an overview of the fiscal 25 Q1 financial results. And then we have a topic on participatory budgeting. That's a follow-up from previous conversation at past budget committee meetings. And then for our discussion, we have the Q1 budget supplemental. And also, after the budget committee, we'll have a separate public hearing for the Q1 supplemental as well. And so with that, can we move on to the next slide, please? So looking at fiscal year 24 unaudited results, this slide right here is a visual representation of where the city financial results landed as a % of budget. In addition, I have provided a supplemental document that has the actual dollar figures that was published online, also sent to council and budget committee members. So you can refer to those numbers. But overall, we've grouped all the different funds by major categories. So you have your general fund, enterprise fund, special revenue funds. But I'm pleased to say overall revenue and expenses were mostly within our budget. There are a few outliers that you can see. Primarily under expenses, you have special revenue fund, enterprise funds, and capital project funds. Those areas are specifically well below budget, and those areas are below budget primarily because of the delivery of capital projects. So those funds are specifically used for capital infrastructure, and so we do have a carry forward request in our Q1 supplemental. So it's not actually because the cost of the projects came lower than expected, it's the timing of delivery. And then you'll see on the revenue side, we have special revenue funds, internal service funds have exceeded budget, and this is primarily driven by higher than expected SDC revenues. That's our system development charges. Specifically, you'll see in aggregate, the special revenue funds, which represents those SDC revenues, are in aggregate about 140% ahead of budget. And then for the internal service funds, there are some engineering plan reviews that caused that fund to be slightly ahead of budget as well. And then again, on the capital project revenues, the revenues are below budget, primarily again driven by a capital project delivery. If there's a delay in the project delivery, then the revenue actually doesn't get transferred to fund the project as well. And then I'm also pleased to say one thing that was unexpected is interest earnings in aggregate across all funds, total 10.6 million, which exceeded our budget by 2.2 million, which is definitely a positive. Next slide, please. So this slide right here is an overview of the history of the general fund over the past several years. So going back to fiscal year 21. So for fiscal year 24, you'll see that at the top line level, revenue increased by 5% from the prior year, which meets what we projected and that's actually what we budgeted. And then the revenue sources are consistent year over year. In general, there was one somewhat significant difference with the intergovernmental revenues. And those are related to one-time grants that were received in fiscal year 24 that were not received in 23. So you would not expect that to happen again year over year. And then again, you'll see at the little blue sliver at the very top, while not significant for on a single fund basis, interest earnings do continue to be strong over the last 2 years, and then specifically for the general fund, it constitutes about, I think it was 1.4 million. Next slide, please. So this next chart, this is a specific look on the general fund revenues by the different revenue sources. And so in aggregate, the budget for the general fund was fairly accurate. We only had a 1% variance below budget, which from my perspective, that is very spot on projections. The largest shortfall that you'll see is driven by our fines and forfeitures, and there's a shortfall also in license and permits. We did have approximately a 44% shortfall in fines and forfeitures, which constitutes about $872,000. Under license and permits, it's not up there, but there was also about an 80% shortfall on land use application fees, or about $816,000. Thankfully, our franchise fees and interest earnings did exceed budget and made up the shortfall in those two categories, which is why we're at only a 1% variance in the general fund. Next slide, please. And so on the expenditure side, I'm pleased to say overall, the general fund, all the different programs and departments landed within budget. We're 91% within budget. And I did want to highlight in our forecast, we do use the 10% benchmark as what we anticipate as our expenditure savings. And so we are slightly lower than the 10% that we expected at 9%, but it's fairly accurate. But the savings are primarily driven, again, by salary savings, and we do budget for full employment when we do our budget. And then you'll also see that there are some savings under policy and administration, and also in the transfers out. The policy administration, that is, we had some salary savings and some program savings there, and then transfers out were all driven by capital for a delay in a capital project that's funded by the general fund. And that is included also, again, in the Q1 supplemental request. And I'll take a pause right there because that is the fiscal year 24 results. And I'll pause and open up for questions on those last few slides.
Anyone have any questions so far? Yeah? Councilor Wolf.
Actually, just a comment, because I had sent some clarification questions on the details. So I just wanted to say great work, thank you, exciting news around the investment interest, and then the overall to come in so well. Just appreciate all the work that you all do and wanted to say thank you.
Yeah, one thing I will note on the interest front, as many of you are probably aware and tune into the news, the Feds did drop interest rates back in September. You know, I don't have a crystal ball and I can't predict what's going to happen in the future, but interest rates are driven by the Fed decisions. And so if you see the news about the Fed decision going down to cut rates further, that would have an impact on our interest earnings in the future. Thank you. Okay, so I'll jump into the next section here. So we're going to look at the fiscal year 25 Q1 financial update. Can we get to the next slide, please? So similar to that first slide over on the fiscal year 24 results, this is an aggregate view of all the different funds. Again, this is only 25% into the year, so you have a dotted line on the benchmark of where you see 25%. And you'll see expenditures and revenues are all actually under budget. primarily because there's a lot of seasonality involved with our revenue sources. So things like property tax, which is one of the largest sources of revenues for the general fund, those are received in November and December in Q2. So you would not expect to see that in Q1. Similarly, we also receive one of our tranches for like WCCLS funding from Washington County, which pays for the library services. Those are again received in Q2. So you're not seeing a lot of the revenue show up in the general fund. And one of the reasons why we have a required reserve to make sure that we have cash flow until we receive some of these revenue sources. Next slide, please. Again, doing a deep dive into the general fund from a revenue standpoint. So total revenues collected to date, we're at $3 million. Again, property taxes received in Q2, so you're not going to see that at this point yet. We did see an uptick in fines in the first quarter, but it is still lower than that 25% benchmark that we were expecting. And then we do anticipate further shortfalls this fiscal year. And I think we had that conversation a few months ago, primarily due to a vendor transition. And then one of the big outliers that you see right there on the other revenue, while that number looks very high, it's only $20,000 ahead of budget. So it's a small percentage as a percent to actuals to budget. But I thought it was important to note that while it is an outlier as a percentage, it's not a significant amount. Next slide, please. So on the expenditure side, all of our general fund programs are tracking within their budgets. We have one outlier, and that is just a timing issue for the transfer that is made from the general fund to the Parks and Recreation Fund. That happened in one large sum at the beginning of the year. And so just from a timing standpoint, that just happened up front. So you would not expect that to have that 25%. But the other operating departments are all within budget. There's a slight increase in library, but it's I believe it's like 26 or 27%, and things can change at the rest of the year. It's something that we will monitor. And with that, that concludes the Q1 financial update. Any questions on the Q1 or any other questions on fiscal year 24?
Any questions so far? All right, thank you.
Okay. All right. So next slide, please. So this next area that I want to bring up, we have the conversation on the participatory budgeting. So I plan on going over high-level definition of what participatory budgeting is. We've done some research into examples, and then want to get some discussion from this group on guidance for staff. So next slide, please. So one of the definitions that we found kind of in multiple areas on participatory budgeting is that it is a democratic process in which community members decide how to spend parts of a public budget. So that is a fairly straightforward definition. I think it's a bit nuanced, and one of the things that we'll explain on what it takes to stand up this kind of program. So with that, I'll jump into the next slide on examples of what other cities are doing for participatory budgeting. So in other cities that we've looked at, there is a democratic process in which community members can either vote or have a say directly on how to spend money. The most common theme that we've seen across the board is that they're used for capital projects in varying degrees. We've seen some as low as 100,000, or in the 100,000 mark. We've seen some as high as 1 million. And so one of the examples that we saw, like the city of Somerville, Maine, I believe. The city gives community members a direct say in how to spend $1 million of city funds and how they will be allocated. And residents have until a specific deadline to submit their ideas. And the criteria are that they have to serve a public benefit, be a one-time expense, cost less than $1 million, and then be located on a city property. And then in Louisville, Kentucky, they have $100,000 that they allocate for capital projects, meaning that the projects have to be something that can be built. And examples that they've used for projects that they funded include things like park benches, bus shelters, roadways, signs, murals, bike lanes, etc. And similarly, City of Lexington and City of Eau Claire, these two cities have similar projects or programs where they have $300,000 and $500,000 respectively, also for capital projects. So next slide, please. So one of the common themes that we found from these examples is that there is a specific pool of money that gets allocated to award for a specific project. And they go through a process of defining criterias for selecting a project, and typically they've all had one single outcome on how a project gets selected. One thing I did want to follow up on is that that's not captured in my example, is we did find out that Metro had a pilot program of participatory budgeting back in 2019. They did their first grant in 2023, and they did award 5 projects, but it was a multi-year process with a team that was built and consultants to help guide on how to stand up this program. And the total allocation that they had was $5 million of grant awards, and it was for nature and parks projects. Next slide, please. And so this slide right here is demonstrating, so what could we at Tiger do today to incorporate participatory budgeting? I think there was some discussion had and feedback received on specifically on the social services and community grant program that we had, which goes through a subcommittee process where the subcommittee goes through the process of reviewing applications and then selecting the grant award amounts following this last year for the first time a rubric or a formula on awarding those dollar amounts. And so one of the things, this is not a recommendation, but just an idea or a concept, is council could designate a specific dollar amount to earmark for some type of participatory budgeting program, in this case, a grant program. And it could go to a single not-for-profit agency, and it could go through a selection process, a democratic selection process. So this is an example of how we could incorporate this into the social services and community grant program. Next slide, please. One thing to consider, specifically on this, so participatory budgeting, while it does involve the community members, there has to be touch points in how we strategically have community engagement. Otherwise, it can turn into a popularity contest that does not necessarily align with council goals and priorities. Some of the trade-offs do need to be considered. So if we're specifically talking about the social service and community grant program, there's a lot of needs and asks for funding. So if this is something else to be incorporated, there would have to be trade-offs within that program. And then, of course, we have city teammates that have to spend the time to administer and stand up this kind of program. And so with that, that concludes my slide on participatory budgeting. And I would love to open it up for conversation.
Yeah. Leah?
Thank you for that presentation and that information. I was hoping that you could give us a little more information about where it says the bullet point trade-offs would need to be considered to divert funding from existing programs. And so I'm just thinking specifically within the community service or social services and community events grant process. That money's not yet been allocated. So I guess I'd love to get a little more clarification on what you meant there.
Yeah, so when I say trade-offs from other programs, it'd be from the total allocation that we generally spend. So Historically, it's been about I think it's like $320,000 or $330,000 is allocated for the community events and social services grant. So depending on the scope, if we're talking about like a $10,000 part, or if it's like $100,000, that could potentially pull away from other grant fundees that go through that process.
So that's if we made it a separate like subcategory on its own versus integrating community voice into the existing like allocation process.
Correct, yes. If we're recognizing we're using the same resources to stand up this program. In terms of funding resources to stand up this program, is it in terms of the allocation money, that money wouldn't be able to be allocated to grantees because it's being instead spent on administrative costs and staff time to oversee the program, or actually that it's going to who the community members would pick rather than who the subcommittee would pick? My intent would not be for administrative time. It'd just be for, so rather than, like say, I'm just gonna use a whole number to make for an easier example. So say we have $100,000 total that we allocate for social services grants and community event grants. To stand up this program, like say we're going to allocate $20,000, then we'd have just $80,000 to spend on the social services part using the subcommittee model. And then $20,000 could go towards the participatory budgeting process.
Okay. Has there, in the research you found, or it sounds like the idea is that the proposal would be separate rather than, I guess originally, I don't have much experience with this, just originally in my head it was that, that process would have changes but be relatively similar in that community members and nonprofits would submit their proposals as they currently do, and then it would be the decision-making process that would have more participation and allocation. So I guess in terms of models that were researched, is there anything more like that? Or
so the only example that we found where there were like multiple recipients of funding was from the Metro example, that last example that I shared. All the other examples from those other cities were much smaller in scope, and it was just a singular. I can't read into why they made that decision. My presumption would be from an administrative standpoint, it's easier to stand up where there's just like one decision that has to be made versus multiple. But that would just be a speculation on my part.
I just want to jump in and say, I think rather than just essentially expanding the subcommittee for the grants, participatory budgeting says we want the entire community to weigh in on this. And so it becomes more of a voting process, kind of like turning in your ballot now, than just having more people at the table going through that process. So there's an option to do, perhaps $20,000 saying this is up for grabs. How are you going to improve Tigard, or what do you want to do under these parameters? And that would be voted on by the community at large, while the remaining funds then could, go through the normal grant process. That's, I think, one option we could look at. But yeah, does that help?
it does, yes. And that actually brings me to another question that I had written down, is that, can you share just high level some examples of what the participation or vote casting, what methods were used?
That one I'll probably need to get back to you on. From my understanding with Metro, there was a pretty in-depth community engagement process where they had invited community members that are open to the public and had forums, and they had multiple touch points, and that is the full extent that I'm aware of on their process. the way we would, if we were to implement some kind of program like this at Tigard, I would imagine we'd have a voting process, like through our website or social media, an avenue where the administration of it would have a lesser impact.
Thank you.
Councillor Schleck, or, Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, thank you so much, Finance Director King. Had a question for you. In those other cities, did they also have a budget committee made up of community members that you're aware of?
That is a great question. I'm not 100% sure on that one. I'd have to follow up on that. But Oregon budget law does require specifically that we are required to have community members be on the budget committee.
Councillor Wolf?
So Eric, thank you or your team for all the research. And it's really interesting because I think like Leah, my vision was, so I think it's about 220,000 is purely social services of the money that we disperse. So having the examples, especially the capital, because I feel like that's different, right? That it's high value, focus on one, impact for the community. What in my mind, what I'm thinking is if we just had a small bucket, how do you decide which candidates or applicants go in that bucket versus the rest that stay with the Social Services Committee? And then we're talking 10,000, maybe 15 versus 220. So now I'm kind of going back and forth. Does this fit how we accomplish this work? And I appreciate the concern around the popularity contest, and I just can speak for the committee. We all took it very seriously, and not that community members wouldn't, but several applications and the time to do the interviews, and just would want that same level of thought, which maybe if you're analyzing for capital projects, it's just maybe more zeros, but not as many applications. So it's just, this has been really good for me because it shows some apples and oranges in how maybe this best moves forward. So I'm kind of pedaling back if this works for what we do. So that's just, but would love to hear from everybody else what they're thinking.
Councillor Schleck?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Finance Director King, for the informational presentation on participatory budgeting. And just, for the record, I was also on the subcommittee with Leah Voigt and Councillor Wolf as well for social services, and helped work with them to spin up a new set of grant program guidelines to try and improve that process, make it a lot more efficient. I think there's been a lot of really good work done in that particular area. I will say with the particular example of the social services and community event grants, I always get a little concerned about how much engineering we're going to put into that particular line item of our $48 million general fund budget. It is $350,000 out of it. I think there's a good process that's in place, but looking at participatory budgeting, it makes me concerned that we're just trying to add more and more layers into deciding that small portion of our budget compared to the overall budget that we need to consider. That's more specific to that example. But in general, when I look at participatory budgeting and I see the comments about the capacity it would take to administer and oversee the program, and I compare that to a lot of the other pressing needs that the city is trying to address, like city manager recruitment, facilities modernization, response to homelessness, and other areas, I do not feel like I would not be interested in being part of direction to say, yes, go ahead and spin up this program, just because there are other things I would like to see city teammates focused on for the next several months. So that's my perspective there.
Council President Hu?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Director Kane. I think my concern is similar to Councillor Schlack's is staff time for administration overseeing it. You mentioned briefly that, if it's a voting program, then maybe we won't need to spend so much staff time, but it's like, how do you prevent people from voting multiple times, So overall, I think for me, it's either we do the participatory budget for all this all the social services grant or nothing, because just, with this small piece of our budget, it just seems like it's not worth the time or the effort of staff or teammates. So maybe we should think of other direction, maybe other than social services grant. Maybe there are other funding that we could use for participatory budget, but I could not think of any off the top of my head. So I do know that there's a nonprofit organization working on this. So maybe, and I talked with the director once, and they seem to be eager to help. So maybe we can ask them to come up with some ideas. At the same time, you have maximum impact. At the same time, would not be such maybe a big drain on city teammate capacity for administration or overseeing the program. So, I would not be in favor of just carving up a little piece of our social service fund for this program. So I don't think it's worth our time. So that's my opinion.
Thank you, everyone. This has been really helpful. I agree. I think the money that we have for our grants needs to stay as is, because we have so many needs, like 2 or 3 times the needs for what we're going for. But I can't help but think in the future that it could be the start of a really cool program to maybe identify, as we're continuing to work through Tyler, and we're going to see some Tyler budgetary relief of in the future, we'd have to look at the fiscal years of being able to say this X amount of dollars now goes to participatory budgeting, and the community gets to decide this really cool thing that is constructed that becomes part of the budget and part of the process. So not changing the existing process that we have for the grants, which I think works well, but looking towards the future, not this next fiscal year, because I think it's too tight for that to perhaps, and too much Tyler going on, but looking forward as we're going through this budget cycle to perhaps say in the future when some of these projects are dropping off, where could this fit? Are we open to that discussion perhaps? Just in a new kind of way to have, I think the community invested in some sort of project that then they can win. Yeah, Councilor Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think that is a terrific idea, and because the Budget Committee meets publicly and has public comment period, perhaps that next year could be an opportunity for individuals in the community to put forth ideas.
Yeah, because we'll need to come up with parameters and then maybe have an idea of what sort of budget that could be. Councilor Schleck, did you have something?
Sure, I'll just mention, sort of casting my mind forward to the social services grant program. I know we are expanding our budget committee by Oregon law. We have to have, if we have an expanded council of 7 members, we're going to have to add 2 additional budget committee members for a committee of 14 people. I do think it would be worth thinking about potentially expanding the size of the subcommittee we have. Currently, it's 3 members out of 10. It probably makes sense to add maybe 1 more elected official and 2 more community members to help sort of lighten the load of that process and get more voices consulted. I know it's a lot more people to consider, but that's something I'd like to throw out there just while we're on this topic.
No, that's a great idea. Leah? Everyone is Counselor, and I'm sorry, you were Leah. Budget Committee Member Voigt, does that work?
Yeah, so I was going to echo your comments that when it was initially discussed, it was discussed as what if this were to serve as a pilot opportunity because the community, grants money was talked about because it was a smaller pool, and so that idea that wouldn't be the end point, that would be then an investment, a pilot project that then could be learned from and expanded to increase, community participation and voice in the budgeting process in general. And I will admit I'm newer to this other conversation. The several public comments that we heard today about task force, through most of them, all of them potentially, there was that expression of wanting more community voice and community participation. And so I know it's a complicated topic, and I know that fiscal responsibility is also part of the city's responsibility, but it just seems really in line with what's being asked for and does have future potential beyond wherever it starts. So I would love to continue the conversation as in the future.
Do you feel like you have the guidance you need?
I do. Yeah.
Oh, yep. Clarissa, do you have any comments that you want to add? Youth Counselor, I also wanted to just make sure, did you have anything you wanted to add? Oh, we'll get you a microphone.
I was wondering, I don't know how plausible this is, but we were talking about having this as like a potential idea in the future, and I just want to put it out there. How plausible would it be to have a bigger part of the budget be for the participatory budgeting? Because it just seems to be like so important for community voice, and because it'll basically just be able that you can hear everyone having a, because it just seems like it'll be like a small part of the budget that's just going to be just for this. If you can make it a lot more, like half or like 3/4 of the original budget, and have multiple projects in there, I wonder if that's plausible or a good idea in the first place.
Specifically on the social service, just to clarify, are you referring to specific on the social services and community grant program, like expanding the participatory budgeting for that specific program?
Yeah, because that seems most like related thing.
Yeah, so some of the questions that I initially have when we think about it's hard to say constantly, participatory budgeting is, so the process in which how you narrow down organizations that should be voted on. So that requires a lot of engagement and thought process and careful thought process and creating the parameters on how you build that. And then defining then from there how many move forward and then how many are awarded at the end. If it's a singular, it's a lot more simplified, because then you have, there's either you can form a subcommittee or a committee to elect which group gets to move forward. But again, that also requires standing up the parameters on how you get to select which organizations move forward, and that also requires community engagement. And so from a staff time standpoint, those are kind of the touch points that that we're considering in order to do this to do it correctly in a way that engages the community. So I guess to answer your question, it's a bit of an unknown on what it would take, because again, we've not done this before. And depending on the scope, the reason why we brought up that one example is to have a more narrow scope as a pilot, rather than trying to do a larger scale, because that would require a lot more infrastructure and thinking about how we stand this up and defining those parameters. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Any additional questions or comments as we wrap up this discussion? Thank you for all the research you did. It was helpful.
Yeah, thank you. So our section's not done yet. So if we go to the next slide, I'm going to turn it over to Kalina and hand you the mic.
Thank you. We can move to the next slide, please. So we have our first quarter budget supplemental. And just to kind of go over what the budget supplemental is, I know most of you understand that, but for those who are new to this process or new to these meetings, the budget supplemental, when we go through and do the fiscal year 25 budget, we have our budget committee. We put forth a lot of work into that, a lot of discussion and planning and putting forth the budget, but there are times that things come up later. So Oregon budget law allows us to come forth with budget supplementals for things that were either new or unknown at the time we did the actual budget adoption. And also, we have some items here that we are carrying forward from the previous year's budget. So they were approved in another year. So if you can go to the next slide. So this first one here, these are our carry forwards that were budgeted into fiscal year 24 that were for various reasons unable to be completed during the fiscal year 24. And we now need to move those appropriations over from fiscal year 24 and include them into the fiscal year 25 budget. And just kind of high level overview on some of these. Community Development Department has money from Tigard Home, their Tyler Consultant, and Arborist Services, and those total carry forwards for that department are $54,700. Within the City Management Department, we are just actually transferring over from one fund division into another fund division, so it's actually a net zero in increased expenditures, but it was $20,000. And then within our finance department, we have $50,000 that we allocated for a cost allocation plan that we were unable to complete. And so we want to move that into fiscal year 25. Our largest of the group is in our information technology department. They have their ISF replacements that were unable to be completed last year, some GIS professional services that they would like to move forward, and then the upgrade of the audio video equipment in both the library and the Public Works Auditorium. Their total amasses to $1.9 million. Just to point out, a large portion of that, $1.75 million, is actually in the Internal Service Fund replacement items. So those are technology items that we put on a kind of a capital improvement plan, so to speak, of, hey, these are going to be needed in these years. Items that were able to continue throughout the year were not purchased, but we do need to replace those, so we're moving all of that. And it's actually not completely the entire thing that was left. There was a little bit of savings there, but we're moving the vast majority of that into fiscal year 25 so that that's available. Next slide, please. So our capital improvement plan, our capital improvement program, carry forwards. As Eric spoke about when he was talking about fiscal year 24, he stated that our transfers out were much lower than anticipated in the budget. That is mainly due to this list of capital improvement programs that were unable to be completed in the year. So when those programs weren't done, the transfers from the other funds to pay for those were not transferred over. So we're asking now to move over the amount for all of these programs. The total for these here, which also includes a little bit of carry forward that I'll talk about on my next page, is almost $5.4 million. It's $5,388,000. And for various reasons, these were not able to be completed during the last year, and so they're moving over into the next. If you can go to the next slide. In addition to those previous capital improvement programs, these four here are not only asking to carry over their unused funds from last year, but asking for a little bit in addition to what they had in the previous year. Some of these are due to increased cost, new grants that were available that require additional city funding for them. That very small one is a new micro grant that they received that they want to add into what they had previous, and then just additional costs that have come up. So it's not a huge amount that we're asking for new funding for. This total amount of new funding on this is just under $90,000. And so next slide, please. And as I talked about, Oregon budget law does allow us to ask for some new dollars in addition. So these are two new requests, or two department requests, that are coming forward that we did not know about in fiscal year 25 budget planning. Our library is asking for a total of $37,000. And two of those items, one is to increase their on-call staffing. They have experienced unprecedented amounts of leave usage. It's gone about 143% higher than they had in previous years. So they are asking to increase their on-call staff so that they can keep their service levels. We're also increasing $10,000 For the Friends of the Library contributions, in going through budget, we found that we put the revenue in that's coming in and planned and anticipated for Friends of the Library, but they did not have the expenditure amounts there. So we want to add that in, so that will offset, it's already in the revenues. The next item is another CIP project. We do already have funding in the sanitary sewer major maintenance program. However, there was a large repair that was found, and when they went out to go look at this repair, it's going to far exceed the budget that they have. It's extensive. They need to call in an outside contractor to assist with that, so they estimate that to be an additional $200,000 needed for that annual program. And the next slide, please. So this is just the overview. So our first quarter budget supplementals, we are asking for a total appropriation increase of just under $11 million, of which, as Eric talked about with the capital improvements, $3 million of that are transfers of funding. So it always looks a little bit higher because we duplicate that where we're paying it out of one fund and then we transfer it in from another. So it increases that total appropriation by that extra $3 million. It's not additional funding being spent. Our carry forwards came in just under $7.5 million, with our new request totaling $327,602. Inclusive in that 10.7 is a correction of funding where we are removing 1.7 million from the appropriated pandemic relief and moving that over into the general fund. Next slide. And did you have any questions on any of those? There are details in each of the exhibits that were included and published to give more detail on exactly why things were moved forward. But if you had any questions, we're open.
Thank you. As a reminder, we are now talking about the quarterly supplementals with the budget committee meeting for discussion purposes, but the city council will take action on this item next. So this is just general discussion, and then we'll take action next. So, yeah. Councilor Stack.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding the CIP project, where in town is that located? Like, just, do we know anyone? Joe, do you?
The $200,000 project?
Yeah.
I believe it's right off of Gardy by Walgreens. Is that fair?
Perfect. And then regarding the on-call expenditure for the library, say it's leave related, I just want to clarify that's like sick leave, parental leave. When we say just people calling out, is that what's sort of going on there? I'm seeing head nods. Okay, perfect. All right, just wanted a little more context on
Yeah,
those.
just for the record, yes, Halstead is here, and she did say, yes, that is use of leave.
Perfect, thank you.
Any additional questions on the supplemental? Yeah. Budget Committee Member Voigt.
I was seeking a couple clarifying questions. I know there has been discussion about a new public works building. What is in years? What is the general timeline for that?
I can speak to that. So in the current year's budget, fiscal year 25, we have just over $1 million for some of the planning efforts, community engagement efforts, and then the what we're working on right now with the council's direction is looking towards going to the voters with a bond, potentially a bond in May of 26. And then if it was approved at that point, we'd be ready for construction soon thereafter. So it'd be a 26, 27 start of a project, and then probably 24-month type project, Joe, give or take. So we're probably 3.5 to 4 years out.
Perfect, thank you. I should clarify that was in the context of a discussion of new AV equipment for a building, that is. But if 4 years out is, I suspected, but thank you for clarifying. And then I guess I just want to put on record that I noticed a lot of the reasoning that projects have been delayed was due to lack of staff or staffing challenges. And so just that I support efforts that I'm assuming the city is taking for staff retention efforts, because I know the team members are such an important part of the city's functioning and the work that we do, and the work that is able to get done. So I want to support and thank those efforts that are happening, because as we can see, it all has a very concrete impact on everything else. Thank you so much.
Any additional questions or comments? Okay. Is that it for the budget committee meeting?
That is it for the budget committee meeting.
Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for being here. We will move on to the public hearing to consider a resolution to adopt the City of Tigard Q1 budget supplemental. I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify by phone or video, please call in or log in now to get into the queue. The phone number is 503-966-4101. Welcome back, Director Kang, or Budget Manager Plath. Is this you?
This is me.
Excellent.
And not to reiterate, there is a slide that looks very, very similar to what you have just seen. But just to go over it for the public hearing, do we have that available? Eric Thornburg. Didn't? Okay. That's okay. Let me just flip back a couple of pages and give you a high-level overview of what you just recently heard. So for the Q1 budget supplemental, we talked about kind of some of the details. What? Is that? Oh, there we go. Okay. So fiscal year budget supplemental 25, we're going to go high level over this. So next slide, please. As you can see, we have 5 departments that are asking for budget carry forwards. We spoke in detail about those, so I'm not going to go over them again. But if you have questions about what they are, you want to look at each of those. Next slide. Our capital improvement programs, again, have the largest need for carry forward of funds. Next slide. These capital improvement projects have need for some additional funding, so that has been included in this ask. The next slide. The new request for budget appropriation, we just spoke upon. You asked questions, which we absolutely appreciate, for these 2 departments within the library, and then also that capital improvement program. And that is increasing for the whole program. I just wanted to add that this particular is for that one area that Joe mentioned, but it's for the program for the year that we're increasing. Next slide. That may be the last slide.
I think that is the last slide.
That is the last slide.
Yep.
Thank you, Eric. So we're asking for the total of 10 million. Sorry, I'm going to pull my page. Didn't come up. $10,790,599.
Thank you. We did not receive any written comments by noon on Monday. Mr. Thornburg, are there any callers in the queue or anyone wishing to testify by video on this item?
Not at this time.
Thank you. Deputy City Recorder Raimundo, has anyone signed up in person?
Not at this time.
Thank you. We will close the public hearing. And now we have council consideration of resolution number 24-32.
Mayor, I move to approve resolution number 24-32.
Thank you.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Yeah, Council President Hu.
I just want to comment, I forget to do it in the last round. Thank you for the Excel spreadsheet of all the items. They are very easy to understand, so I really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thank you. Will the Deputy City Recorder please read the number and title of the resolution?
Resolution number 24-32, a resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2025 first quarter budget supplemental.
Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, Resolution 24-32 is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Thank you. Really appreciate all the work that went into it. We will now move on, and we will change to the Town Center Development Agency. For the next agenda item, and it is a public hearing to consider Town Center Development Agency, TCDA, fiscal year 25 first quarter supplemental budget. And I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify by phone or video, please call in now to get in the queue or log in. The phone number is 503-966-4101. And we have Budget Manager Plath to present the report.
Hello, me again. So for the Town Center Development Agency, we actually have 3 carry forward items. Sorry, I'm getting old and it's easier to see without my glasses this close. We have a carry forward of $565,000, and that is for award recipients of developmental assistance that was awarded to Family Promise. That was unspent in the previous year. When they do the awards, sometimes it takes a little bit for that to carry forward. So we're asking to carry that one. The next item is $164,600, and that is to cover improvement grants that were awarded out to recipients but have not yet been completed. And the last item is for Universal Plaza, and that is $47,000 that needs to be carried forward for final asphalt testing and project closeout. The total amount of carry forward for TCDA is $988,200, and we're asking to move that from fiscal year 24 to 25. There are no new requests.
Thank you. There were no written comments received by noon on Monday. Mr. Thornburg, are there any callers in the queue or anyone wishing to testify by video?
None at this time.
Thank you. Deputy City Recorder Raimundo, has anyone signed up to speak in person?
Not at this time, Mayor.
Thank you. I will close the public hearing, and now we have consideration of TCDA resolution number 24-03. For any questions or comments, directors? Yeah, Director Schlack.
All right. Chair, I move to approve TCDA resolution number 24-03.
I second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the Deputy City Recorder please read the number and title of the resolution?
TCDA resolution number 24-03. A resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2025 first quarter budget supplemental to Town Center Development Agency, TCDA, Urban Development.
Thank you. All of those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, TCDA resolution 24-03 is adopted by unanimous vote of the directors present. And we will now reconvene the Tigard City Council. Thank you so much for being here tonight. The next item on our agenda is a houselessness task force workshop, and we have Program Manager Azelle to present the report. And anyone else she wants to bring up to the table, I guess.
Yes. So we're going to set up fun that we're going to have Chart and CCE also be talking to anyone watching. Yes, so we're going to do a real workshop tonight, and we're going to invite Chart and CCE members who have agreed to attend this evening to come up to the table as well. You might want to bring your chair because there's not going to be enough. but we're all going to get a little cozy up here at the table tonight.
I'm scared.
It's been a long time since I've done like a real council workshop setting. I don't bite.
You don't bite.
I don't bite. I'm very friendly. I showered today. Huh?
And every other day?
I work from home.
That there's virtual attendees.
Oh, there are?
Yeah,
Okay.
Caitlin and Ollie from CC are virtual.
Okay, yeah, there's nobody from Chart. Thank you. Just gonna stay back there. Up to you. Go. All right, I think we. That would be a really. Yes, so Mayor Lube just had a great suggestion that we go around and do names. So if we can just start with this side of the table and then identify if you are part of CCE, so Committee for Community Engagement, or member of CHART, Community Houselessness Assessment and Response Team.
My name is Jeremy Haidu-Polland, and I'm on the CCE.
I'm Shayla Katadia, and I'm on CCE.
My name is Kim Marshall, and I'm with CHART.
Megan DeSalvo, Tiger Chamber, and I'm on CHART.
Good evening. I'm Megan Cohen. I'm the City County Houselessness Liaison here at City of Tigard.
Kim Ezel with the City of Tigard.
Israel Hawkins, CCE.
Christy Allen, CCE.
Connie Rawmaker, CCE.
Nicole Hendricks, Assistant to the City Manager and the Team Liaison for CCE.
Stacy Caducey, CCE.
I'm Caleb Peterson, and I'm part of CHART.
Yes, there are two, I believe, virtual attendees. If you wouldn't mind unmuting and introducing yourself, Nicole, if you want to call on the individuals since you know who they are. Okay.
Caitlin, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself. We'll give Caitlin a minute. Allie, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Ali Haddadi, CCE.
Yes, Caitlin said that she does not have a microphone, so she is listening. But Caitlin has joined, and she is with CCE as well. All right, so tonight we are all here to talk about the Houselessness Task Force. This is coming forward from a discussion that had previously happened at Council on August 13th about the creation of a couple different task forces, and we're moving forward with houselessness. There was a pretty broad idea that was brought to the table. Next slide, please. With a couple of really big questions. One being, is there an opportunity to formalize how the City Council receives advice on houselessness policy? CHART has been an institutional partnership for several years, but is there a way to more formalize that? And also, does an opportunity exist to then bring in more community voices? And knowing that we also have the Committee for Community Engagement already engaging in the city, was there an opportunity to involve CCE and the CHART group in order to form something on a trial basis to see about formalizing, knowing how much staff time goes into creating a new board and committee, and so trying to really pilot that out. What follows in the next couple slides is really, it's an idea. It is something to react to. It is not any sort of formal recommendation, more a way, just a place for us to start an interpretation of council guidance from that August 13th meeting and further conversations. So next slide, please. So just to talk a little bit, I mentioned CHART, Committee Community Houselessness Assessment and Response Team. This was an institutional partnership convened monthly to advise city teammates on houselessness policy. We've already brought the advice on things like safe parking and time, place, manner forward to council. And then there's the Committee for Community Engagement. This is a council-appointed committee composed of community members who are asked to bring items of community interest and concern forward to city teammates, as well as then to communicate about city initiatives out in the community. Next slide, please. So talking about what a proposed houselessness task force could be used for, Nicole Hendricks and I worked together to create this purpose. One being to advise council and city team on public camping regulations, so thinking about charts, presence, and advice on past time, place, manner regulations. We've recently begun the safe parking program, and we'll be receiving regular monthly progress reports and engaging this task force on reviewing those reports, offering suggestions for program improvements as we move forward. A third being to utilize the lived experiences of the Tigard community and in the Tigard community to advise city teammates on any other related initiatives and programs that come forward. And the final one to be building education and awareness of Tigard houseless programs and initiatives within the community. In the couple of years that I have been working with CHART, it has been fantastic to be getting that advice and those institutional partners and being able to connect these folks who are really in the work every day with more members of our community to really be talking about what goes into this work can be a really powerful connection. Next slide, please. So thinking about membership of this group, we have listed representatives from and then a long list of organizations, and these are mostly the organizations that are currently represented within CHART or have been represented in CHART or have been invited to CHART in the past. Several of them introduced themselves already earlier this evening. And then also putting forward somewhere between 2 to 6 CCE members if we choose to integrate both CHART and CCE together to have that community voice, as well as a council liaison. Next slide, please. And just thinking a little bit more, very much into the weeds, but thinking of this as a pilot program, thinking about how this group works together over the course of 1 year, meeting about once a month. CCE currently meets every other month. CHART currently meets once a month during the day. So meeting monthly to try to kind of feel out this pilot program, and then leadership. So being co-chaired by one of the institutional representatives and community representatives. So when Nicole and I went and talked with both CCE and CHART and prepared for this meeting, one of the pieces of feedback that we got was some intimidation about how nuanced the houselessness work can be, and community members not wanting to come into a conversation unprepared, but also not wanting to feel like their voices didn't matter, and institutional partners wanting to just really be able to share the knowledge and the base that they have. I know I've learned a lot from our CHART members over the last couple of years. So thinking about this co-chairing as really an expression of that partnership between our institutional partners and community members was the thought process there. And next slide, please. So as I said at the beginning, this is really an opportunity to react. Very happy to turn this over to the greater room around me, and looking forward to all of the feedback about how we can kind of develop this into something that really works for our community. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Does anyone have anything that they want to jump in and add, or first thoughts? Council? Any first thoughts? Yeah? Councilor Wolf?
Thank you so much, Kim. I thought that was a great way to set the stage and the why and moving forward. And I guess what I just wanted to share is I was very much an advocate of this conversation, this opportunity to create an advising group. And for me, it's two things. I so respect and appreciate the technical knowledge that comes forward to really give the guidance that's required. But I also see Tigard as one of the key communities in Washington County that has stepped up to really lead in these services. So having said that, to have the community input and how does this impact Tigard, I thought was really important. So the idea of having this joint thought partners together to guide the technical work as well as the Tigard impact, I thought was really important. I so appreciate the individuals on the committee for community engagement, and how you lead and make an impact in what we do. I thought it was a good fit to bring all these individuals together, and your thoughtfulness around the work we do in the city. So just wanted to thank everybody, but really support and appreciate this opportunity to create the next step.
Thank you. Councillor Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor. And following up on Councillor Wolf's comment, I sit on CHART, and it's been just a wealth of learning opportunities for me. And I know when CHART also first started, it was an opportunity for a lot of the nonprofits to get together and really share resources too, because they had not met each other initially. And so it really has been a wealth of information from the technical community side, with the nonprofits supporting, and then also now bringing in CCE, so we have the community and the technical aspects. One thing that I would like to perhaps raise is that within the proposed houselessness task force purpose, that we add an element of business input, because I know they have been impacted both positively and perhaps there's opportunity for some additional voice for them, but just perhaps where they have an opportunity to lend a voice of how they can have a voice within the process, mainly because I know that they have been impacted. And so is there that opportunity just from a purpose standpoint, and again, to be informative, not perhaps even complaint driven. And then the other is, I would love to have some other name if possible. I tend to like acronyms. I think CHART is a really good name. I don't know, and looking to Councillor Wolf, if that would be amenable, or to CCE, or we can maybe call it, and I'd hate to say chat, but maybe something like a Community Houseless Assessment Task Force. But given that it is meant to be a pilot program, it'd be great to have it have more action-oriented name. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I do have a question. We do have the Tigard Chamber of Commerce represented. Do you feel like there should be additional business voices at the table? I'm just trying to understand as we talk about the makeup.
Yeah, I just think, and leave it up to Megan, who's obviously here, what your thoughts are. And it maybe even doesn't have to be additional representatives, but maybe there's a purpose within here. We have four bullets, and perhaps we can add one that's something to utilize the lived experiences of businesses in the Tiger Triangle, maybe downtown, to advise city teammates on the impact. So we could have that as an option.
Yes, to keep with kind of the theme of this, depending on the time of day that this meets, Kyle Nepper and I have the availability. So the Tigard Downtown Alliance, as well as the Tigard Chamber, may have the availability to sit on it, but it will depend on the day and time, because we do both have families and children. If it is a time that is not workable for myself, I know that we have a process through our board and our committees to go through and select member businesses to come in my place. So it would just be a number of how many do we want? Do we want one? Do we want two? But we absolutely have that. Typically, it's someone at the board level or someone at a committee level, because they have the same access I do to the multiple voices in our community. We represent all of Tigard. We don't just represent one area of Tigard. So we want to be sure the person that's representing business is talking about the entire area and not just one segment.
Council President Hu?
Thank you, Mayor. I was a big advocate for this task force, especially for the last point of education and awareness, because no disrespect to anybody who is doing this important work every day, but for me, when I wanted to find out what the city is doing comprehensively, collectively, with our partners, I have to go to multiple areas and build a very rudimentary bullet point myself, and I still probably miss a lot of all the good work we're doing. So I think with any task force or any committee or board, I think it's important that council give them specific direction on what the deliverable should be. And I think if we go forward, I would be a big advocate of having a central depository of something I just mentioned of, what is the city doing? I didn't realize, that our marijuana tax money is going to fund the triage addiction center. And so there's just so many, houselessness, as Kim says, is a very complex problem that require a multi-pronged approach. And I think in order to, educating the public and bringing them on board is very important, but we have to educate them on what all these areas we're doing. And that's my hope that the task part of the deliverable from this task force is build a central, I don't know, a table or I don't know, a graphic or database or saying educating public. This is all the areas that the city is working on. And this is what we need you to help us with, advocating at the federal level we need more funding for behavioral health issues. We cannot do it alone. So I guess my point is I really want this task force to go forward, but at the same time, I want it to be very focused and give them specific directions on what we want from what the council wants. And one thing that I really want is to have this central database of what we are doing and what we still need to help with. And, in order to we're tackling this issue, but, we need all the help we can get. And if we don't educate the public, they don't know how to help us. So anyway, that's my thought.
Would you be looking to rework that last bullet point or add a completely new bullet point? Because I think maybe there's elements of it in there to build education and awareness and initiatives within the community. Does that encompass what you're talking about as far as building out an educational hub as well, which is more physical rather than, I think, that is like build education and awareness up here, where we're asking for like a web page to land on.
Yeah, that's a very general goal, but what I'm saying is that maybe a specific deliverable that's a result from that fourth bullet point.
So like a sub bullet, like this is the deliverable for that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. Other questions, comments? Yeah, Youth Councilor Mainini?
Just to echo what the rest of the council has said, I'm really excited for this task force. And just to mirror part of what Councilor Hu said, I really do want to make sure it's focused. And I was wondering if there's a way to confirm representatives or people who would make sure that all types of houselessness are considered like youth and veteran houselessness, just because they add even more complexity to this already complex issue.
Yeah, Sheila.
To build on that, and I'm on CCE, so I'm not knocking anyone on CCE, but is there an opportunity? I saw that there's 2 to 6 reps from CCE, but is there an opportunity to have community members on this that are non-CCE committee members? Because there's people in the community who are very invested in this topic and maybe thinking about those issues, may have more understanding of all the initiatives. And so I'm just wondering if there's any openness to that. Not to replace CCE members, but in addition to.
I can just talk from my perspective. It's my hope we add community members. We haven't, I think we can jump around and those sorts of things. But I appreciated giving us something to talk from and to talk about. But absolutely, we have so many community members with different lived experiences that I think it's important to bring them to the table, because they can ask a lot of questions that maybe we already have the answer to, or seeking different kinds of questions. So I appreciate you all, CCE, but I also want to make sure we're not making this task force so large that it becomes dysfunctional. And so we need to have a real discussion on what is the reasonable amount of individuals who can come from different areas that bring that experience. Maybe it's the expertise, or it's the community communication expertise, or it's the lived experience or the businesses, to really get it to the point where it's functional and helpful, but a wide variety of individuals are brought in. So thank you for bringing that up. Yes, I hope we bring in community members too. So maybe council or other individuals want to react to that. Yeah, Councilor Schlack.
Thank you, Mayor. Just before I get to that specific point, I just want to say broadly, I support having a limited duration recommendation focused task force. As I said previously, when this idea was broached, I support Councilor Shaw's idea of having a more action-oriented name. And I like Council President Hu's suggestion of having some sort of repository or deliverable that sort of, sums all of that up. Regarding this topic, I wanted to speak because when I was sort of pondering this proposal of having CCE members, it sort of raised just a more generic question in my head of when is it appropriate to form a pilot program with existing community members who have a record of volunteerism in other boards and committees versus appointing an entire fresh new board. And I don't have an answer to that, but I think between this and some of the discussions the council has previously had about maybe a task force focused on climate actions, it would be sort of good to sort of feel out. And I just wanted to say I have those questions as well, but I don't have an answer.
No, I think that's really great. I think the fuzzy answer is it can be whatever we want. Our standing boards and committees have specific numbers and those sorts of things, but the special appointed task force can be under the direction. So we can do everybody new, we can do some new, some currently participating in chart, we can do any sorts of things when we sort of decide on what the membership we want it to look like. So, Jeremy, did you have a comment? Nope, okay. Other counselors commenting on makeup? Yeah, Councilor Wolf.
I would just say I appreciate the conversation about expanding, and thank you, Shayla, for bringing that up and support that decision. And I appreciate the public comment, different perspectives, but really important to be part of the committee group. So thanks.
Yeah, Connie. Also, happy birthday, Connie.
Thank you. Thank you. I was very impressed by the gentleman earlier that spoke, the veteran. I think that's a very important consideration.
Megan.
Good evening. One possibility, hearing from you all about sort of the experience you want to grab. I know that in the membership, we sort of listed the existing organizations that are there. I think one model that we see on similar committees is listing like the experience that we're looking for, the communities that we're trying to serve. So we could be more general membership, say we want a youth-oriented homelessness position, a veteran-oriented position, that type of thing. And then of course, we have folks with that experience that have been involved in chart for a really long time that would be able to do that, but there might be some other areas where we've had gaps or have been missing that before, and that allows the opportunity to bring in that wider variety of voices and experiences that I think you all are speaking to. So I think that would be one option for looking at how we form that membership and talk about the different roles we want there.
Yeah, I think that's great. Are we seeing some head nods even from?
Yeah, I think that's, speak for myself, I think that's a great option to consider. Practically speaking, I think it's more important that we decide on the size of the committee first, and then we can sort of figure out allocations from there, because I think that the size of the committee is still a bit up in the air, even in this proposal where it's 2 to 6 members.
Yeah, I'm trying to think when we put together, I'm sorry, not the charter review, this is so many years ago.
PSAB?
Thank you, Public Safety Advisory Board. We started from a place of like, what are we looking for? And we sort of backed into what that number was. So I want to make sure that we have enough flexibility to make sure we get everything that we need, and it's an odd number of people, not an even number of people, and those sorts of things. But I appreciate keeping the idea that we don't want it too large. And we've done that before, right? Like with PSAB, with the charter review, sort of fitting in these areas. So does individuals have any specific areas that they would like highlighted on this membership? I think we talked about someone youth service oriented, veteran individuals. Yeah, Israel.
Well, the youth, veterans, but definitely my vote for being somebody, an educator type. Maybe one of the assistant superintendents could delegate or appoint somebody here, because I think the teachers are dealing with a lot of houselessness kids that they don't know if they're going to show up to school or if they're going to be transferred from one day to the next. I think that'd be an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Statistically, I'd want to know what is the makeup of the houselessness population in Tigard, and then how does the committee reflect that? So are there more disabled folks that are houseless here? Are there more people of color who are houseless here? And then how does the representation of the committee reflect that? And also, what about people who have been houseless and been through that experience? And so they, talking about lived experiences, they can relate.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful. Yeah, Council President who?
I would want to see a first responder there, either out from police or from TVFNR. So I recently went on a ride along with a TVFR firefighter, and we respond a call to Just Compassion, and that really opens my eye on, both sides of what they have to do. So, yeah, I will advocate for a first responder to be on the task force.
I would also like to look at the makeup before I say this, but just considering just like statistics-wise, maybe someone who's queer.
Sorry, I didn't understand the last word. Someone who is queer. Thank you.
Allie, I wanted to give you an option online to see if there's anything you wanted to jump in on. You may not have the ability to raise your hand, but if you have something to say, feel free to raise your hand too. I'm keeping an eye on it.
I appreciate it. Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Kim?
I'm hesitant. Hi, Council. Words. Well, I can see myself getting phased out pretty easily, and so I'm coming just from a personal vantage point here. The beauty of CHART, and thank you, Councilor Shaw, for showing up every month. It's so appreciated. It's a group of people coming together just to talk about these issues that the city is combating or engaging with, and the group feels really collaborative and a collective, and I just don't want to policy it up. Like, I don't want to just make it so, I understand we're moving towards a task force. I understand the collaboration between CCE and CHART. It's just, for me, it's just feeling, it's losing some of its holistic approach that comes to it, and the ability to, I'm not saying it, I can't, help me, Megan.
So I think part of what Kim is alluding to is the fact that we have worked on CHART for quite a long time, many, many years. This goes well before my time here. Debbie Mollahan was on in my place. But in the time that I've been a part of CHART, we've come up with park rules, we've come up with policies and how to move forward to advise you all on things that you can take action on. And I think that we're fearful that you'll lose some of that invested knowledge in the downtown core and in specific areas of our community and with our houseless community. I think we have members on our chart committee who have beautiful relationships with the people who are unhoused. So we want to be sure that those also remain intact. Since this is a replacement for chart, I would just like to move that perhaps we consider allowing some of the members who have given 5 years or more of their time to stay on.
That's what I meant.
Counselor Wolf.
So I want clarity, just so that I'm understanding. So Kim, when you presented, I mean, I think the purposes of both are very different. In your vision of this, does chart go away, or you may? Because that's not what I was thinking. I'm thinking. And Steve might be going, no, wait. I think it, because I'll be honest. I mean, the houselessness issues in Tigard, like I mentioned, we have stepped up. We are in Washington County doing the work and supporting the groups that are in here. It has, as a city, has a community impact. And so I wanted that opportunity to bring together the technical skill and knowledge with the community input, so that as we heard, from public comment, we don't always get public comment on the agenda items. And while it was, 3, I just feel like there's a community interest in the actions that we take in this city. So, Kim, I so appreciate you giving your voice, because I think the technical expertise is important. What's unique about CHART is it really is a staff, it's not formalized, it's not, follow council committee criteria. It's unique. So I guess maybe that's, this is part 1 and part 2 needs to be different. But I just wanted to send the message that I really value the technical knowledge that is brought to the table, but I feel really strongly that there needs to be the community element that is structured like a council committee that gives public conversation and discussion as to how we move as a city. So maybe I just really muddied things up, and I would like council's other opinion, but I just want to say I respect and the hard work that you all clearly feel passionate about in delivering to staff.
Thank you, and I think that it was brought up over here. Like I think your question is really valid. I think there's an unknown right now. Megan, whispered it in my ear. Is CHART going away? Is this task force replacing CHART? Was that the vision, or to your point, is it different?
Yeah, and I think it would be good to have some clarification, but based on kind of what we had presented tonight, this would be the evolution of CHART into something new, because a lot of that purpose is what CHART has currently been serving for, on that advice giving to staff, and then through staff to council.
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear from council, because I think we did come in with different assumptions perhaps, because my assumption was also the evolution of what the next stage would be, because I absolutely value what you do, but I mean, I don't know of anything that you have advised that has actually come to council. It hasn't become formalized in that way, or it hasn't been communicated in that way of CHART recommends this, and maybe I have missed it, but there isn't meetings and those sorts of things that our other committees sort of have. And so CHART is this sort of ad hoc thing over here that isn't like any of our other boards and committees. And I don't know the history or evolution of that, but I think it was sort of our desire to talk about climate task force and a houselessness task force as an evolution to, I think, understand and partner in a different kind of way what this task force would be.
So I just want to add then, and this goes back to Kim and to Megan and to Steve, that if this is an evolution, I'm fine with that, but I want to be really mindful about the committee size, right? Because there's a lot of technical skills in this very long list of experts. So then that's not in my wheelhouse to say this is the 6 or 8 that should continue on. I don't feel like that's, the expertise really, I think, is within staff. So I want to be really mindful, I guess is what I wanted to say, of who then would be coming forward as CHART members.
Councilor Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I saw chart continuing, CCE continuing, and that there be a pilot program of some members from chart and some members from CE to see if this pilot could be an evolution and a change. But in the meantime, I'd hate for chart, because a good example is somebody said, boy, if we could just get some coins to do laundry, to have some of our homeless community do laundry, and another nonprofit said, we've got the money. But that wouldn't have happened if chart wasn't together. And so I don't know if council needs to be informed on, 75 cents is going to be given to the next 20 people who do the laundry. That may not be it's great to know, but that may not be at the level we want to know it at. But so that was my thought, was that since this was going to be a pilot program, pilot task force, that it'd be a combination of the two, keeping it small so it's robust, so we can get the data, have the resource library, and have those particular informed community members, but also the chart members who can then build that technical experience and the community experience together. So that was my vision.
Would there be enough of a different charge to have the two committees doing different things? That's also, I also don't want to waste your time, right? I'm thinking of individuals who are here on a night, not with your families and those sorts of things, and what you spend with CCE and what you spend on chart, and asking to do yet another committee that I don't know would be separate enough work to justify doing that. That would be my question. And I'm certainly not asking for the details of 75 cents and those sorts of things, but I literally had no idea that you advised on park rules, right? And maybe that's a communication thing?
Yeah, I would like to just kind of clarify that. So there were park rules which are set by the city manager, so they don't come to council, but that was advised by chart, those came to. And then all of our time, place, manner conversations, I've tried to put into the AIS usually what the chart recommendation was, if it was far enough in advance, or at least mention it during council presentations. I know I come to council a lot. I don't expect everyone to remember my presentations, but I have tried to call out the chart recommendations during those.
We haven't heard from Council President Hu or Councilor Schlack. Did anybody? Council President Hu?
Yeah, Mayor, I'm in the same position as you. To be totally honest, chart is a black box to me. I really have no idea what you did, and I don't even know what the acronym stands for until just now. So I still think having the public education public face and public education awareness part is very important. So no offense to people expert at chart, but if we want to ask about coin, we can just call somebody who may know about it. We don't need a committee to talk about it. Maybe I'm being clueless, but that's what my thought was. And to Mayor's point, I think it will be a huge drain on people's time to be either chart and this or CC and this. So I will want to see just somehow a evolution to this task force if we're going to have one. So that's my thought.
Councilor Schlack?
So I'll muddy the waters even more with my perspective on this, because I literally viewed this as a Venn diagram of the of chart and CCE, and sort of a meeting of minds in that space. And so when I made comment earlier about do we have additional community members, it was going from a 2-circle Venn diagram, if you will, to a 3-circle Venn diagram. That was how I have been thinking of this, and I would hate to lose some of that technical expertise in these conversations, but I viewed this more of two groups coming together and not for a pilot program, not necessarily abolishing one group and creating a totally new group. That's where I was at going into this conversation.
Youth Councilor Mainini?
I do worry about abolishing chart completely to have this evolution, because it's still a pilot program. We don't know exactly how it'll work, exactly what it can do. And so maybe as a pilot program, we just sort of see what happens. And if the policies are different enough, if the actions they take are different enough, it shows that there isn't a lot of overlap, that they can be distinct. And if they are similar, maybe we'd find a way to merge them. I'm tossing ideas out.
No, that's what these work sessions are for. Christy, you had your hand up.
Thank you, yes. Given the level of knowledge that we have in some areas where we don't have a lot of knowledge, could we take this time and/or take it offline also to do more research and come back and say, this is what each group does, here's what we believe, the impacts that they can make? Because I think a great point was made by Councilor Hu about, well, what's the deliverable or the impact we want to have? And I say that from a point of being a member of CCE, which I really enjoy doing and being a part of. But sometimes you start to wonder, what's the impact that we're starting to make? Are we spending the time versus having the deliverables or the impact? And so with this one being a pilot program, pilots to me usually mean there's going to be end result at the end to say, do we continue or not? So what is that success metric going to be, and why or why not? Do we move forward, or do we decide not to do it?
Thank you. Yeah? Caleb?
I think that houselessness is something that affects us all in some way or another, and I really do value the conversations in the chart meeting. I think, though, that sometimes when there's a bunch of experts in the room, then we don't know what we don't know. And so I value bringing people together so we can learn more about what we're missing or what we think we all have. I've found that people even ask questions that I think I know the answer to, but I can't actually say them out loud.
Yeah, Shayla.
So I whispered, I didn't know that, like, about this being an evolution of chart. So when I think about that, because I'm the chair of CCE, and in talking to Nicole, there is no conversation of dissolving CCE to become a part of this, right? And so there are a few concerns I have. One, I just want to validate and acknowledge what you're feeling, in that when you've worked really hard to create a collaborative, collective community and new members come in, it's change, and change is unpredictable, and we can't control what happens, right? And so that's a difficult process. And so we're not having to go through that, right? Because it feels, my concern is that feels inequitable, that one group continues to operate as it does and gets this extra opportunity, whereas another a group is potentially ending their current structure to go into a new one. And I would not want to be the person coming into that, causing that change, because I feel like there's a lot of trust that needs to be built. I wouldn't want there to be resentment. You know, there's just a lot of, we're humans, so there's a lot that goes along with that. But and saying that, is there like a compromise in some way? Because for me, with CCE, we meet every other month. If this met every other month, it just, you know, there's lots of ways to play with the logistics. And on CCE, we talk about a lot of different things, not just houselessness. So it is a different, it's different from what CCE is doing. So I just want to acknowledge that I don't want it to seem like we're coming in and just being disruptive.
Jeremy?
And maybe just from a purely pragmatic place, the composition of, it's a pilot project. So chart identifies 3-4 people that participate. CCE does the same. We're talking about, that was a long list of people potentially, and then we added some others that we might want to include. It's a pilot project. So CCE sends 3-4, chart sends 3 or 4, some of these other individuals we talked about, and there's a task force. It's just 1 year. At the end of the year, how's this working for us? Like then you know how to proceed from there. But to get to the Venn diagram, just keep the 2 circles, just overlap them and see who's in the middle there for that pilot time.
I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate your comments, Kim. And I think there might still be an opportunity for that collaboration and the kind of the resource sharing that Councillor Shaw brought up as something that might be city convened, but might be separate from what CHART's charge has been when it comes to advising council, which is really what we're looking at trying to formalize through this task force. So I don't want anyone to think that the City of Tigard is now ending our relationships with our nonprofit service partners. We appreciate the work that everybody does, and we want to continue to convene those kinds of meetings, but the advice portion we think needs to probably be more formalized to allow more clarity so that everybody knows when CHART is advising instead of it being a little more of a black box. I appreciated that comment, Council President.
Do we feel like we have any next steps, Kim?
I do.
This has been an incredibly helpful conversation.
This has been, yeah, I like I said, brought in something for everyone to react to because we didn't have a lot of clarity. So now we have a lot more, and I feel like I can take back kind of all of different pieces of advice and some of the concerns and insecurities around kind of how we're moving forward with a much more specific plan and that we can bring back to council. So thank you, everybody in this room, very, very much for coming out and spending your night with us.
Thank you. Does anybody have anything else that they want to say before we wrap up on this item? Okay. Have a wonderful night. Okay. City Council will recess for 10 minutes and we will reconvene at 8:40 p.m. Okay, I will reconvene this Tigard City Council meeting. The next item on our agenda is an ordinance repealing and replacing Tigard Municipal Code 2.04 regarding the city manager. I will open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to testify by phone or video, please call or log in now to get into the queue. The phone number is 503-966-4101. And we will start with City Attorney Rajala for the report.
Good evening, Council. So this is another one of your ordinances that started as a charter update to reconcile the code with the new charter. And then it turned much bigger because the section had not been thoroughly reviewed or revised for quite some time. There were provisions that weren't necessarily consistent with current practice, difficult to understand, and just plain wrong. So we have gone through and updated this code. It's a complete rewrite, so the document in front of you is not redlined. It's a new and improved document. So the key change is substantive. It amends the language around appointment and removal of the city manager. So this is the clarification stemming from the new city's charter. The language in the code now mirrors the language both in charter and also for other charter positions. The city attorney and municipal court judge mirrors that language, so we have consistency there. It amends the duties of the city manager and clearly delegates authority where that hasn't been necessarily true or there in the past. This is the section that is most out of date with current practice, so it's helpful to update that 20 years after it was passed and make that more consistent with current practice. And then the final main substantive change is around rulemaking. So the current code has a pretty cumbersome process for rulemaking, and it's not necessarily consistent with a lot of the modern practices, such as posting and newspaper notice, things that just are not responsive to the community nor allow for flexibility. So we've taken out those and provided a more streamlined process in order for the city manager to adopt administrative rules. So those are the key changes. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. There was no written comments received noon yesterday for this item. Mr. Thornburg, are there any callers in the queue or anyone wishing to testify by video?
None at this time.
Okay, thank you. Deputy City Recorder Raimundo, has anyone signed up in person?
Not at this time, Mayor.
All right, I will close the public hearing. And now we have council consideration of ordinance 24-13. Councilor Schlatt.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to take a moment to thank City Attorney Rajala for her work on this particular ordinance. This was a very, since this was a total repeal and replace as opposed to just redlining, I found this to be a more complex exercise than the last few modernization code changes that we had. And you were really helpful with my mapping of like, here are all the old provisions. Are they covered by the new provisions in your legal opinion and so on. So I really appreciated your help guiding me through that process.
Thank you.
Mayor, on that note, I move to approve ordinance number 24-13.
I'll second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion regarding this item? Seeing none, will the city recorder please read the number and title of the ordinance?
Ordinance number 24-13, an ordinance repealing and replacing Tigard Municipal Code 2.04 regarding the city manager.
Thank you. Will the deputy city recorder conduct a roll call vote, starting with Youth Councilor Mainini?
Youth Councilor Mainini?
Yes.
Councilor Wolf?
Yes.
Council President Hu?
Yes.
Mayor Lube?
Yes.
Councilor Shaw?
Yes.
And Councilor Schlack?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. The motion is adopted by unanimous vote of the council. Thank you, City Manager, or City Attorney Rahala. Whew. Would you be interested in the next item? Whew. And the next item on our agenda is City Manager recruitment, and we have HR Director Gomez. And yeah, you've got a microphone? Excellent. Welcome.
I actually have a nameplate now. This is exciting. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I am Laura Gomez, the HR Director. Thank you for letting me be here this evening to follow up on our discussion from October 8th regarding the recruitment for the City Manager. Let's see. I'm going to pivot a little bit here, looking at the timing. What I'd like to do is follow up on that meeting that we had and talk about the recommended recommendations for a interim city manager to start implementing that process so that we can have someone start in February of 2025. Also talk about the recruitment process for a new city manager and provide a recommendation to council to allow me to lead the recruitment process in consideration of the timeline instead of forming a work group at this time. So let's start with also noting for record that we need to, by law, have a council meeting looking at November 12th for a public hearing to adopt the job and hiring standards, the recruitment process, and policy directives. This meeting will be open to the public and will provide an opportunity to comment on the standards process and policy directives. And looking at the timeline and considering the holidays, as well as just realizing we're about 3 months away from City Manager Reimer's retirement date in February, that recommendation is to begin searching and identifying an interim city manager. 3 months with Christmas and Thanksgiving and other holidays will be here sooner than we are anticipating or expecting. So I'd like to get your approval to begin that research. For the same reasons, staff is recommending partnering and using an executive search firm for the recruitment process. Yes.
Can we do one topic at a time? So let's
Yes.
start,
Yes.
let's start with the search for an interim city manager.
Yes.
Are you just looking for us to give you the okay to start that process?
Yes, I am.
Okay, let's start with questions, comments, or a thumbs up for HR Director Gomez. Yeah, Councilor Schlack.
So how would this process look as opposed to the overall city manager recruitment that we're looking at? What would be sort of the key differences and, sort of applicant pool, if you will, or for this?
So that would actually, I would be working with our leadership team to identify someone who may be interested or someone who is currently in that role. We would also try to align that person for a small amount of time to provide that support for us and the governance side and as city manager is performing now. But I would work with the leadership team and come back to you, of course, and share what we find and what the recommendations are before proceeding.
Thank you.
Are there any objections as far as directing HR Manager Gomez to start that process? Yeah, Councilor Wolf.
No objections, just a clarification to kind of follow along. What are we? We're counselors. Sorry, counselors. I know. Sorry. So you would have a final group then, or that you would bring forward to us to then do the
Yes.
public interview process for the interim.
For the interim, yes, I will, I don't have a process written. This is just so that we can start, just because of the timing. But to start identifying anyone we believe might be interested or someone who we believe would be a viable candidate, and at least identify some of those criteria that we'd like to see in someone, and absolutely share it here with council before proceeding.
Okay, well, I'm sorry to be so
No,
such a
that's
stickler
okay.
on the words, but proceeding that we would hear the names and then interview the finalists.
Yes.
That you would be recommending by
Yes.
staff. Okay.
Councillor Schleck?
I have no objections to directing HR Director Gomez to proceed as described.
Excellent. There you go.
All right, thank you. And the second topic was to talk about the recruitment process for the new city manager. My recommendation is to partner with an executive search firm who is experienced and has provided the same types of services in the past. They actually are the ones who are the experts in the field that have advertising. They can do the scope of work that we're asking them to, and sourcing and finding someone that would be viable and arranging the interviews and so forth. My recommendation is to actually partner with Raftellus. We have a current contract with them. We have enough money to start a process with them if we'd like, without having to go through an informal request for proposals, which would take close to 6 weeks to complete. I also experienced their professionalism services. They were the ones that I went through to get this position, and as a candidate, I had a great experience with them. They've also have a national source. They have locally sourced for Washington County, Lane County, throughout the state of Oregon. More recently in the city of Milwaukee and Beaverton, they have a couple of active recruitments there for some executive members. They did provide a rough estimate initially, just asking them. The rough estimate was about $25,000. Like I said, we have $23,000 available. A rough estimate using other firms was as high as $70,000. So I would prefer to work with them and start that process sooner than later, with me leading that, and of course sharing the information with you as we progress, because we still need to have that public hearing to review what you are also going to look at for that scope of work that I've previously provided. But definitely have that meeting would be 2 weeks out, as opposed to me being able to at least start communicating with Raftellus. So that would be my recommendation, is that I start that process instead of and forego the work group and doing an IRFP.
Okay, so the question is whether or not we give the thumbs up to have you A, hire a contract, and B, use Raftellus to be the search firm to execute this.
Yes.
Given your experience with Raftellus.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Questions, comments? Yeah, Councillor Shaw?
Yeah, comments, I support that, I think, given the timing element, and they are a nationwide firm, and we have them on retainer as well. So I just think from a timing perspective, that makes sense, and they brought us you. So,
thank you.
Yeah, Youth Councillor Mainini.
Sorry. I was just wondering if there's a reason that they're like 25,000 while others are like 70,000?
It's a large range. Some were 30, some were 24, and others were 69, and they varied. And that's without giving them the deliverables or the action items that we needed. That was just a very rough estimate. So that was not a formal, it was just seeing what was out there, or who had the time or the capacity to provide that, and just a rough estimate.
Council President Hu?
Thank you. So we only have a draft scope of work right now, right?
Yes.
So we don't really know how much this company will actually cost at the end.
That's what I can start. If I proceed from this day after, I can start that conversation with them and provide them with the drafts that have been prepared and provided to you. And I think that should be available. But that scope of work, the deliverables, those are the tentative drafts. And of course, I would come back to you and get your final approval for that as well. But this would at least initiate that draft.
And in your timeline, you said if we go out for a soft request for proposal, it will extend the timeline by 4 to 6 weeks.
At least 4 to 6 weeks,
At
correct.
least, okay. And in the meantime, we have a interim city manager. So I don't know. I feel like we still need to go out for requests for proposal, but I might be in the minority here. So I would like other council member speak on this.
So I initially sort of was thinking that way too, but I have heard from other cities and talked to other cities that have used them on top of knowing that we have used them for recruitments here, and everyone speaks really highly of them. So for me, because I was the, hey, let's see what's out there, I feel comfortable with the recommendations that I've heard from other cities. So just to give you my perspective, which again, I was initially like, no, we need to go out. And they're like, they were really great. I'm like, oh, well, maybe we don't.
Okay. As I said, I will be in the minority, so be it.
And I will add that I will make sure that council is included in each of those processes and steps as well. So you will still be an active participant and be able to provide your input and recommendations as we go through the process.
Councilor Schlack, did you have anything? I don't think you've spoken on this yet.
No, I support the recommendation, and depending on where the funding lands, I imagine, this is why we have contingency budgeted in our budget for unexpected circumstances, and this seems like a pretty good example of that. So that's my perspective here.
I think we have a majority comfortable with your recommendation. Okay.
Great. Thank
And then Deputy City Recorder Raimundo, we need to put on the 12th that there will be a public hearing for the hiring standards, criteria, and policy directives.
Will do, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
other questions?
Three.
That was
Okay.
it. Yes.
Any additional questions or? Okay. Seeing none, thank you so much,
Thank
HR
you.
Director Gomez. We have no non-agenda items or no executive session. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mayor, I motion to adjourn.
A second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you so much. We are adjourned.